Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conversations with Nicole Show. I'm Nicole Huckabee. My guest today is country music artist Ansel Brown. From performing at NASA's final Space Shuttle events to his heartfelt Bigger Heart tour with Children's Miracle Network, Ansel's music has transcended beyond entertainment to inspire and uplift communities. He shares how his collaborations with NASA and his commitment to honoring military veterans through his music reflect his unique approach to combining artistry with purpose. Ansel discusses the transformative power of music to heal, connect, and how he continues to make a lasting impact through his advocacy. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful discussions. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conversations with Nicole Show. I'm excited to have as my guest today country music artist Ansel Brown. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, it's nice to finally be on here. I've been
Absolutely.
waiting.
Yes, you're out of Mooresville, North Carolina. You have been in this industry for quite some time. Tell my audience about yourself.
Well, I grew up in a Navy family, so that's why I don't really have much of an accent. So that's the first
Yes.
thing I'll say. I don't really, sound like I'm from South Carolina, but that's where I'm from. And my dad's side is all from Greenville area, and my mom's side is all from the Charleston area. But growing up in Hawaii, Washington, D.C., Rhode Island, Norfolk, you name it, I knew how to meet people and make friends. And I think that's good in country music.
That sounds like the title of a country music song, right? That.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I grew up in a family that moved a lot and made a lot of new friends. I started singing in the Hawaiian Children's Choir, which was a very popular professional children's choir that we were on TV like every week. And that was my first taste of really performing, and kind of gave it up in high school and stuff and got into football and sports. And then picked it back up as an adult, and mostly in kind of in a worship music setting with church. And it kind of just lit a desire to sing and write and things like that. And then before you know it, I was writing country songs, and I was talking to my friend. I was like, "Hey Dave, man, I think I'm supposed to be in country music." He kind of laughed and he goes, "Well, send me some of your music." So I sent him some of my music, and he was, I was driving down in Charlotte, and I remember this like it was yesterday. But he called me up and he was like, "You wrote these?" He's like, "You wrote these?" And he's a very accomplished musician himself, and he just was like awestruck that I could write country music. And before you know it, I was in Nashville recording, and before you know it, I was on radio, and then before you know it, I was like CMA debut spotlight with Jewel, and that's the artist known as Jewel.
Yeah.
And she was getting into country music when I was, and I was the CMA Artist of the Month. I was CMA debut Who Knew to Watch. Got the Discovery Award. Things just I didn't have a label, so I've always been kind of an independent minded artist. Not that I wouldn't work with a label, but I kind of feel like they would stick me with an A&R person that really doesn't know as much as me about marketing and branding. And I always felt like that was kind of a risk, getting involved with the label that way. However, there are good things about labels, so I don't want to talk badly about labels. But anyway, I've always been independent minded. And part of that is because I got into music and I started working immediately with Children's Miracle Network in Charlotte, and just got really hooked into that community and met some kids that really opened my eyes to the strength and power that those children who are facing immense odds are just, they just have it. And so I wanted to do work with them before I even finished my music and before Nashville knew anything about me. So they were really my first foray into performing, was actually at children's hospitals and
That's a
meeting.
special group. That's a special
Very.
group. Yeah.
And I wasn't, they don't let all artists go room to room with the families. It's typically, an artist will go in, they'll be in the lobby, or they'll go to the playroom and they'll hang out with the kids and have fun and perform. But I felt my connection was like so strong with the kids and the families that the hospital really wanted me in front of people. And it was, I never asked what a child was facing or a family was facing. I wanted them to forget about it while I was there, and I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to
Bring them
just
joy.
lighten their day, and them lighten my day. And typically it was more them lightening my day than me lightening theirs. But it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the time I launched, I was like, man, I got to do a hospital tour. So we started the Bigger Heart Tour, named after my first single, which was called Mine's Bigger. And it was just about my heart. And before you know it, I was visiting different hospitals. Levine was kind of my sponsor for that. And the Panthers got involved and wrote a song called One Wish that was on my first album that if you haven't looked at the video on YouTube, you should, especially with some of the hospital visits I did, because we experienced some amazing things. I mean, I will absolutely say there were a couple of miracles during those visits. And so as a result, I kind of got pulled two directions in my music career. One was country artist that was rising, getting a lot of accolades, getting a lot of good reviews, charting on radio with Mine's Bigger, and really just kind of taking over Nashville with a former NFL star named Sean Gilbert, who played for the Panthers. And him and I started a label together, and we did this hand in hand, and it was just we kind of went into Nashville and we disrupted. I'll just leave it at that.
That's
We got
good.
everybody's attention, and it was a fun experience. But at the same time, I was being pulled in this. I don't know, I just wanted to give back so badly, even though I hadn't really made it.
Yeah, but you had a philanthropic heart.
Yeah.
You see that the oftentimes the gift is in the giving.
Yep. And, right in the middle of the collapse in 2008, we had just finished a hospital tour in the Carolinas. And Sean ended up having to pull out. And a lot of that had to do with just financial instability and just, everybody that lived through that knows how bad it was. I was
Yes.
one of the lucky ones. I didn't really experience, financial loss during that time, but there were a lot of people that lost a lot of money.
Yes, it was a hard time.
Yeah. And so I was right in the middle of charting. So at that moment, I had been supported completely by Sean's investment in me. And I was doing all this philanthropic work with the children's hospitals, and Ronald McDonald House is another one I'll get into. But I had to keep going. And, the radio promotion stopped and all that. There's a lot that goes on in country music that people don't know,
I'm sure.
that fans don't really know about, but it's a intricate world to network in and try to make your mark, especially if you're not on a major label.
Right.
You
I'm
know,
sure
it's
it's hard. It's a beast.
Yeah, the deck is stacked against you automatically. And I always just felt like that was not a barrier to me. I don't know why. I felt like I didn't care. I think it was because I had accomplished personally in business as much as I already had. In fact, Sean Gilbert was a client of mine at a company that I worked for. And I worked for a company called Envisionative, which is a creative marketing and advertising agency in Mooresville. And, so I had well known people as clients. So I had already been hanging out with a lot of people that were influential. And I didn't feel like, I just didn't really feel like I needed the help. I felt like I was going to make my path and I was going to do it my way. But I did get sucked into the two different worlds, and that was giving. And then that was, making a name for myself in music. So I will say I was drawn in two different directions, and that probably didn't serve me perfectly in music,
Right.
but I learned a lot. And then I had to start supporting myself once Sean was out of it, in the middle of my launch, really, as when it happened. So I started doing unique things like setting up tours, finding sponsors, going across the country, visiting other children's hospitals and Ronald McDonald houses as I went, because then, I had companies like Marriott putting me in the band up every stop we made. So it took a lot of the cost away that I was, facing as an artist. And we went all the way out to Western United States and did a lot of good things out there. And we just had fun doing it. But, I didn't have anybody helping me with radio, and that was a big loss. So you all have to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is an ability. And that's what I like to write about is in fact, I'm writing a book called Vulnerability, and it's about it being your superpower, because it really is. And as an
Brene
artist,
Brown talks a lot about being vulnerable,
yep.
vulnerability. Yeah,
And as an artist or a podcaster or a news anchor, you've got to have vulnerability, or your fans won't connect. And
absolutely 100%.
so the first thing I tell any young country artist is be vulnerable. Don't
Yes.
hide behind anything. Don't hide behind your microphone. Don't hide behind your guitar. Don't hide behind your piano. You get in front of your audience and you be you. And if they connect, they're going to connect at a deeper level. So vulnerability is important, but I think we all kind of face that, and with the new age and streaming and everything else, it's just become more sterile to me. But I still meet really interesting people, and I'm still making friends with my fans because that's my number one goal is be friends with my fans. I'm looking for A-teamers right now. I call it the A-team because I want people that are under, listen to this. They get under an NDA. They hear me recording my music as it goes. So they hear a rough cut, a second rough cut, a mix, a master. Then they're kind of learning what you go through as a recording artist and how the song evolves from being just a rough mix to being a real mix and a master, and what the difference is when you hear those tonal changes in a recording session that take place with artists. It's not just like walking in one day and doing a song and you're done. It's walking in, doing it multiple times, having yeah, it depends on your producer, but if your producer's really like, I want to think about each word. Okay, Ansel, what does this word mean to you? And then you're singing about that word in a way that it means more to you, for instance. So I'm trying to open it up to my fans that are, I'll call them super fans, the people that really want to be involved with me, not just listen to my music or go to my shows, but they want to have lanyards that say VIP. They want to
Truly
be in the,
present, truly present.
yes. And I get their feedback.
That's fascinating. And I think that's, you have to be innovative as the world changes, as technology changes, to let your voice be heard, no pun intended. But let's go back a little bit. So you're on this journey, you are doing philanthropy, you're also trying to sing, get your music out there. So what happens when the two worlds are kind of trying to go in two different directions? That's kind of where we were. You're getting sponsorships to be able to do the tour to on behalf of the Children's Miracle Network. Then you kind of, in 2008, you lose some sponsorships. What happens then?
One thing takes over my heart, and that's it. That's where it went. So, which was really, really good for me personally, for me intellectually, for me as an artist, for me as somebody that lives through the heart. So instead of focusing my effort on radio, I started focusing more and more on my effort of trying to help the communities that I'm involved in, like Children's Miracle Network or Ronald McDonald House, working with the NFL alumni, working with different organizations with my mindset of I want people to learn about my music through my experiences, not just through the radio. Because I didn't have radio as an asset at that point. So it was more about I'm going to connect with these communities one-on-one with the people that they're serving in their communities. But part of my problem was I was so engrossed in that and I was self-managed. So as I was doing that, I just forgot about me. Like I became absent almost as an artist in those situations. Even though I was doing music, I
Sure.
was performing, I was making fans. That was happening. But I think it was just about, my heart kind of took over. And from that moment on in 2009 through 2000 and let's say 4, I ended up doing things like having a Super Bowl contest with the NFL alumni and Ronald McDonald houses. I ended up traveling across the country, meeting with these children in these children's hospitals. So I got with the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities in Charlotte that was trying to build a house in Charlotte to serve families. And I took my tour bus, which by the way, even though I wasn't on radio at that point, I got Flying J to give me the first tour bus that I had. And that was their first sponsorship ever in their company's history. And it was one of those
Sweet.
things where when I was
Everyone knows
visiting,
Flying J's.
yeah, when I was working out in the hospitals out west, I drove by their headquarters. I walked in with my assistant, Tracy, who had made the connection. We went up to the marketing department and we sold them on doing my tour in the Southeast. And they said yes. And they gave us the tour bus. We wrapped it. We did all that stuff. We showed up at the ZMAX Dragway on national TV for Doug Herbert, who's a famous drag racer, Top Fuel. I was helping his organization called Put on the Brakes. So I had Ronald McDonald House, Children's Miracle Networks, and Put on the Brakes associated with my bus and Flying J. And we just, ESPN put me on national TV. Everybody got to see Top Fuel Nitro go in my nostrils and inflame my whole head when Doug Herbert took off at the start line. And then I got to hear the announcers go, "How about that, Ansel Brown? Welcome to Top Fuel Racing." And it was hilarious. That was on national TV.
Great.
And so we got in this position where I was working with him and I got my tour bus. This is nobody knows about this, but I got the head of Ronald McDonald House Charities in Charlotte and the head of the NFL alumni in this region together on my tour bus in a mall parking lot. Nobody knew about this meeting. And I introduced the two groups and I said, NFL alumni, I really want you to help Ronald McDonald House get their house built. So from that moment on, Ronald McDonald House became the primary charity that the NFL Alumni's annual golf tournament funded.
Wow.
I've
Incredible. That's
never told that.
awesome.
Yeah, I've never told that in public.
Awesome.
And so I have something to do with Ronald McDonald House Charities having a house in Charlotte, literally. And so when I talk about experiences, those are things that I can't buy. Those are things that I can't just create. They're things that happen organically and through vulnerability that just made my experiences like I felt like I was a superstar doing that. Like that's how I felt because I was being allowed to do things that people kind of dream about. Like I was hanging out with NFL stars at their golf tournaments and just being one of the guys and you know, and then that led into other things like World of Outlaws, dirt racing, and working with them on a theme song and them saying yes, and the Carolina Panthers taking one of my songs and getting me to write a song for youth football because I was their community, or I was the artist that was helping the Panthers expand their youth football program in the community. And so Riley Fields, who's head of their community, he's amazing. Like, talk about one of the nicest philanthropists, business people that I've ever met. It's Riley Fields of the Carolina Panthers. He is amazing. And that's why he's still there, even though ownership changed. And you'll see him in his blue jacket. You know, he's just one of the best people I've ever worked with. And so he got behind me. We recorded a song in Nashville called We Call It Football, which is on, you can get it on any streaming service. Panthers helped me do that. Sir
That's
Purr
awesome.
was involved. Everybody was, you know, that was cool. So I started doing these things and they became experience-based, and it became something that I was driven by, but I kind of, like I said, I kind of left the artist side, kind of the Nashville side back, and it just kept going. And so before you knew it, I was like I wrote a song called When You Fly. I sent it to the, you know, any artists that are out there, listen to me because I've done it. I know how it works, and I know what you have in your mind, you can share with the world if you can connect it. And so what I did is I had a song called When You Fly. It was written for pilots, and I sent it to the head astronaut in Texas and at the Johnson Space Center. And I don't know how many weeks or months it was, but I got an email back from her, the head astronaut, saying, "We love your song. We're sending it to DC."
That's
So
awesome.
I didn't hear anything else after that. I just heard, "We love your song." She wrote a longer email than that, but it was a very sweet email, man. It was like, she was like, "Everybody here, listen to it. We all love it. And we're sending it to DC, and we hope they do something with it for the final Space Shuttle events." The final Space Shuttle is coming, and I'm like, nothing's happening. I was out in Arkansas filming a video for When You Fly on an airplane, on an old 1946 Stagger Wing. And I came into the conference room where we were resting, and somebody said, "Hey, Ansel, you got to take this as NASA." This was
Wow. Who gets a
literally,
call and says it's NASA, right?
yeah, because I know what that meant. So I immediately dropped everything. I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm going to get a yes or a no.
You're like, please let it be a yes.
Yeah, and there was only like 8 weeks, 9 weeks until the launch in July. This is 2011. So I answered the phone and I'm like listening, and all I hear is just like everything stopped, time stopped, everything stopped, and all I hear is, "We love your song, and we would be privileged if you would do the final Space Shuttle launch for NASA." And they told me they had talked to all these other big artists. I'm not going to name who they were. They were gigantic artists, not Ansel Brown size. They were like, you know, 50 times me. And I just, everything stopped, and I'm like, I'm going to do this.
A lot about you and the songs that you write and who you are.
Oh, I wish anybody could experience that. That was just, you know, it's confirmation. It was, you know, all sorts of things personally for me that I was like, I'm going to do this. Me and my family and all my friends are going to go to Kennedy Space Center, and we're going to be a part, not just there to view. We're going to be a part of the final Space Shuttle launch.
Wow.
So we picked up, we did all that. We went there, and then we performed. We had a great time. We got to stand in the front to watch the shuttle take off for the last time, STS-135, the Space Shuttle Atlantis. And during a break after my performance, I went in, and there's this guy sitting in this conference room, and I'm just piecing the pieces together for you of why this just kept going.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and I walk by, and I'm like hearing this voice, and I'm like, I know that voice. And I asked my handler, I was like, "Who is that?" And he's like, she was like, "That's Peter Cullen. You know who Peter Cullen is, right?" She's like, "That's the voice of Optimus Prime in Transformers. He's a famous voice actor. He's here they were doing the world premiere of Transformers Dark Side of the Moon during the final space shuttle launch. So he was there with a bunch of kids. He was working with youth from
Yeah.
Goddard Space Center. And I said to my handler, I said, do you think I could sing When You Fly to him? Just a cappella? And she was like, I can go ask. So she went in and she asked, and they said, yes, you can do it. So we went in, I sang it. By the time I was done singing it, Peter had tears all the way on his, down his face. He was just, you could tell he was struck. That song like talked to him. And so from that point, of course, my boys got to meet him, and we're all huge fans. And from that
Yeah.
point on, we kind of
We all love
became,
Transformers.
yeah. So we kind of became friends from that moment on, and I'll get back to him in a minute. So then that went so well that NASA's like, "Hey, do you think you can come back for the final space shuttle landing, which is a closed event where we're only going to have astronauts from the history of the program, dignitaries, and world media. Can you come and do a radio broadcast from the event in the morning?" So they set up a national radio talk with a famous comedian on country radio that's syndicated. And I got to do an interview. I was the only person in the world to do an interview on country radio stations across the US about the final landing. And I got to experience that, which was really unique and different.
Yes.
And then they said, hey, do you think you can come back for the final space shuttle farewell ceremony? And we want you to speak after the director of NASA
Wow.
and then sing. And we want you to help uplift all of these contractors and employees that are going to have a career shift because the program's ending. So I got to meet the director of NASA, hang out with him and his wife and all these famous astronauts in the green room. And then I got to go up on stage following the director's, is that what you call him? The director, right? He's the one that the president appoints to run
I
NASA.
think so, yes.
I think I might be saying it wrong. Anyway, so I got to go and speak to this crowd of people to inspire them about the future and about why I was there to celebrate this with them. And then I got to sing my song When You Fly to them. And it was just talking about connecting with people. I got to autograph and date the farewell banner that all of the employees of NASA signed that's up in the exhibit of the space shuttle in Kennedy Space Center.
That's
so if
incredible.
you go there and if anybody goes there and you look at the blue NASA logo, I'm right down at about 7:00. I was like the first person to sign it. I actually felt guilty signing it because the NASA officials wanted me to sign it, but I was like, I didn't spend years working on this. I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I did it. So now it's there in perpetuity in the space shuttle exhibit.
Special. How special, that's
Tim McGraw doesn't even have that. So that's what I'm talking about. So that kind of thing kept happening.
Yes.
And it made my life just completely unique.
Yes.
And we kept doing it. And then I ended up building a relationship with NASA from that point on with Goddard Space Center and a guy named Daryl Mitchell and the Technology Transfer Division, which was just an amazing group of people that are taking NASA inventions. And I'm an inventor too, so I'm very close to this. But they take, I'm a patented inventor, so I know what it's like to invent. And they do this every day, in their sleep, and they create products like memory foam or hair. You ever use a hair straightener by Chi?
Yes, I have.
So that's NASA technology. So the directive of the tech transfer department is they must, by law, license their inventions to American industry and people.
Okay.
So they have to do that by law. So they're always trying to find ways to get in front of businesses, investors, people that want to start businesses or add something to their line that could use NASA technology. So I don't think a lot of people know that. I did
not know that.
Yeah. So it's a really cool thing. So I got involved with them, and he's also he's the one that brought Peter Cullen in. So before you know it, we were doing a song contest. So you have to sign a Space Act agreement with NASA to work with them. So as an artist, as a business, if you want to have a relationship with NASA, you have to get under what's called a Space Act agreement. So I got under my first Space Act agreement in 2012, I believe. We ended up doing a nationwide song contest for their youth program. And these kids in high schools wrote songs. And then me and my business partner, David, who's also my business partner in my advertising agency, Envisionative, we sat down and we judged all these songs from these kids. There was one song in particular that was called Flying, or it was something along those lines. And we loved it. And so we finished the song. So we kind of wrote the song with her her start. We finished the song. We announced the winner. I got flown to Kennedy Space Center with my team to do a concert for all these kids that were visiting from around the country, from schools, in a competition, a technology type competition. And that was an amazing experience. But when I got there, NASA knew my background in hospitals and Ronald McDonald houses. So when I got there, there was this, and she was probably in her mid-teens, and she was in a wheelchair. And I remember she pulled up with Daryl, and he said, "This is the girl that won." And and her face lit up, my face lit up. She had cerebral palsy.
Wow.
So she had spent her whole childhood in Shriners hospitals, which is another group that I like to work with. My granddad was a Shriner. And so maybe that's where I get all the helping from, is my
I
granddad.
think so. Yeah. My dad was a Shriner too.
Yeah, maybe that's where
I have an appreciation for what they do. It's phenomenal as well.
I mean, I'm just thinking of this for the first time, but maybe that's where I got it from, because,
I think it's in your
I'd go to his
DNA for
house and
sure.
I'd go to his house in Naples, and he would have a kid without an arm and most of his leg is gone. And he's just like the funniest kid I ever met. And that kid was staying with my granddad for the summer and with me because I was there and I got to know him. I didn't stay in touch with him, but that touched my life.
Yeah.
And that
Made
might
an
be
impact on you.
that might
No
be
doubt.
what subconsciously, yeah, I think I found my answer. Okay.
I'm glad I could help.
So we get, what was I saying?
So you were,
So this girl grew up in Shriners hospitals, won the song contest. We ended up having a whole day together before my concert for the kids. And then we flew her and her family to Nashville, and I flew to Nashville. We recorded the song with Cliff Downs, who's my famous producer, who's amazing. He's producing some of my stuff for this launch. And she got to experience being in a production studio with me recording a song that she wrote with us. And so my producer's sitting there, he's like, she was singing with me, and he's like, "Do you like to sing?" She's like, "Yes." She didn't say anything. We brought it up. And then, so before the day was over, she was doing background vocals on the song. And so if you want to, you can probably put a link to that song, but I'll get it to you. But it's called Flying.
Okay.
And that was the song that NASA produced with me in a kids organization, kids internet safety organization called Rocket 21. And so we all went to Nashville, did that. And then when it was done, we all flew to Oregon, where her high school was. And me and NASA surprised her at her school. And we had her, and if you look at my LinkedIn profile picture, I'm going to cry. That's the moment. That's why I don't change that profile picture, because that moment's cemented in time to me. Because the whole high school, I never saw a high school love another student as much as that high school seemed to love her. And we did that twice. There were so many students. We had to do 2 big auditorium presentations of the song in front of her at that school that day. And then we went to Shriners, and her and I sang it to the kids at Shriners Hospital in Oregon.
Life-changing. That's it. That's life-changing for her and for you.
Yep.
And for you. Yeah.
And so, so that's my profile picture on LinkedIn. If you look at it, you'll get it now. You'll be like, "Oh, now I know what this is."
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. And so that was just, oh my gosh, that experience, just another thing that I'm like, Tim McGraw didn't get to do this. I was like, this is, this is just this is what I was telling myself is, I like Tim McGraw, so that's why I'm mentioning him.
Yeah.
But, but it just, that's what, and they also do a lot of children's hospital work, by the way, a lot. Him and Faith both or they did when I was in it. They were doing it too. And so it was just one thing after another. So I got on a second Space Act agreement to create a TV show with NASA and Goddard Space Center for veterans. And then we got Dale Jr.'s production house involved, and that was moving along. And it took me I think we worked on it for about 4 years. And I finally got a letter of intent from Goddard Space Center for the TV show. And I'm thinking, okay, and this was during my break from music. This is something I was working on when I left music. This is one of the things that I was working on. So I was out of music completely at this point. I was going to be a host of a TV show for NASA and veterans. And basically what happened was we got a letter of intent from NASA, Goddard Space Center. I showed it to everybody. And then I think a couple weeks later, Dale Jr., I don't think he really knew what was going on, but he closed his production house right in the middle of my, I'm ready to do this. So it's kind of like back in 2008 when I lost my main investor due to the stock market crash. So I have a habit of doing this. So that happened. And, I was on my second Space Act at that point. Then we created another Space Act after that. These Space Acts last, I think, 3 years. And so that brought me to like 2020. But during this whole time, I had developed AFib. I had gone through a very tough divorce that kind of took away some of my passion for music. And long story there that I won't get into, but it was a life-changing experience for me, and not in a good way. I was living a country song, basically. We'll put it that way. And so then I got chronic AFib, and then I was starting to try to come back in 2019, but I was getting AFib like every day. If I signed up to do something leading up to that show, might have been nerves, might have been whatever, but every day my heart rate would just go crazy. And nothing was medication.
That's scary, Ansel. That is so scary.
Apple Watches really open. A lot of people learn. I was different. I kind of knew every time that I was going to get AFib, I knew it was coming. A lot of people don't know they have AFib, and it can cause strokes. It can cause all sorts of things. It doesn't literally kill you itself, but it can cause things that will kill you. And so, I was lucky that I knew about it, but a lot of people have discovered they have AFib because of this device. And it's like one of those things. I think people younger and younger are noticing they have AFib, and it's a scary situation, but ablation is an appropriate way to take care of it. So I did that in 2020, and it went away. So I started recording a song, got involved with the TikTok cop out in TikTok land, who had lost his job for doing some things, to support police, because that was when we were kind of fighting against the police, on media and stuff. And I felt like I needed to write a song about this moment and what this guy went through losing his job because he just said what he was feeling. And, I made a song that's for everybody. It's not just about supporting the police. I personally am a diehard at supporting anybody that serves our country, whether it's police, firefighters, first responders, whoever, military in particular. And so I wrote a song that talks about, I grew up a certain way, and, I grew up supporting the police, and that's what I believe in. But I know that I didn't necessarily grow up the way some others did. And I know everybody can experience bad people in anything. And if you've experienced bad circumstances, and I've seen a couple that were very iffy when I was with Sean Gilbert, that happened on some of our trips to him, and that I hadn't experienced myself. And so I wanted a song that wasn't just, screw everybody that doesn't agree with me. It was more about, if people read my lyrics, they think it's just a support the blue kind of song. It's a song about being an American, needing the police, because we don't all have bodyguards. We don't all have the resources to protect ourselves. Some of us are completely indefensible at times. We really do need the police. We need police to be good, and we need to be good to police. And so my song is really about just getting rid of the kind of the dumb side of things, saying, oh, we need to get rid of them, to saying, no, we need the police. And I think most people agree with that sentiment, so many years after that experience that we all went through. And so my song is really about just growing up, but no matter how you grew up, let's still come together and support the police, because there are lots of good policemen and women, a lot of good officers that sacrifice a hell of a lot for us and for their communities. And I really wanted to just make sure I was supporting them. So it's called Middle of the Madness. So it had to do with all the COVID stuff and lockdowns and all that stuff. And you can find that anywhere you stream. And I think the TikTok cop ended up getting on Dr. Phil, and talking about his story. But he got hit hard emotionally. He didn't write the song, but he was good. Like, I'll just put it this way. People think that he only thinks one way, like conservative and pro-police, and, but he knew every line that I was writing, and he agreed with every line that I was writing in that song. So if you read my lyrics, you can get a sense of what he really is like. And he is good to everybody. He is very passionate about what he supports. I am non-political, just so you know. I don't get political ever.
Yeah.
I don't like getting.
I try to avoid that as well.
So even my song that I wrote for a political purpose was really serving both sides. Right. And I just feel like, the people that I agree with and don't agree with have all supported my music. And I really feel like that's a contract. And I don't think we should break it, no matter how rich we get. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So that that led to me recording. I know this is long, isn't it?
No,
That
no,
led
this
to
is
me
your story.
recording.
This is your story.
That led to me recording. And again, finally, after 14, I did the first ever concert and parade for Veterans Day in Mooresville. I helped set it up, I helped plan it, and I headlined it as an artist. That was the last time that I performed. I stopped after that concert and that event, and I went into my cocoon, I wrote some very dark stuff. I ended up getting remarried during that time. We have a wonderful daughter together. She's an immigrant from Colombia, South America. She's an amazing woman. She works in the ER. She's frontline person and very strong woman. And we had a daughter together named Sophia. And you can check out our YouTube channel called Seriously Sophia. It's a kids channel. So yes, I get to be goofy dad. So if you are looking for me to look like a cool country artist, so I was doing those types of things during my AFib experiences and my break from music, really growing my business in Mooresville and Visionative. Again, I'm a branding guy. I've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world: Baskin Robbins, M&M Mars, Family Dollar stores, beer companies, food companies, a lot of packaging design and creative and advertising and marketing. And so that's my side hustle, I'll say.
Yeah.
It's a full-time side hustle most of the time, but we own the business. We've got like almost 10 people in the company. And so we have a good time doing that. It's a good release for me. So I focused on that. And then starting in 2020, after my AFib was gone or almost gone, and I started writing and recording with a guy named Brent Bowers in Salisbury, North Carolina, and Snug Studios. Eddie Snuggs is an amazing guy. Those guys got behind me and they kind of talked me into getting back into music. So they co-wrote with me. We finished some of my songs, and then I got back in the studio and I slowly started recording music. And so what happened is I got to 2024 last spring. I got everything done. I had about a 12 song album, maybe 11 songs. I was getting ready to release it, and something told me not to release it. I was like, I'm not ready. So I just held it, didn't do anything. It was mastered and everything in Nashville, recorded here in North Carolina. And about 8 months later, somehow I reconnected with Cliff Downs, who's my original producer. A little bit of touch with him. Life just I'm not living there. Life just kind of goes down different roads, and you get kind of sparse with your,
Yeah, life just happens.
So I just wanted to tell him, I'm like, Cliff, I really want you to listen to my album. In my reconnection with him, I found out that he had faced esophageal and prostate cancer, and he sounded really good, but you could tell he was worried. So it just made me feel like I really wanted him involved. And I'm like, maybe I didn't release it because he's supposed to be involved in this. I don't know. I'm one of those guys. I kind of I look at the situation and I kind of feel like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And then sometimes there's an answer and sometimes there's not. But this time it felt like there was an answer that Cliff needed to be involved. So I brought it up. I said, can you listen to my album? Give me your feedback. And when he did, he's like, yeah, I like it. It's good. He's like, do you want some other material? And I'm like, you know what, Cliff? Show me what you have. Because I knew that he was in the publishing world for several years as a leader there, and he had met some really good writers, and he works with really good writers. So he brought about 10 songs to me. And I wanted all of them. They were by some very good writers. But we ended up settling on 4 songs. And one of those songs is going to be the first release on the album, which is called Whiskey Makes Her Miss Me. So I ended up going to Nashville. We recorded those 4 songs, and 2 of those songs will be the first 2. So Whiskey Makes Her Miss Me and We Make America Run will be the first 2 singles on the album. And in the process, we decided, instead of doing just the full album all at once, we were going to do 2 singles, an EP, 2 more singles. I say your singles, we're going to promote to radio, and then another part 2 EP. And then in the fall, we'll release the entire album as a collection. So it'll be part 1, part 2, and then the full album. And I think it's going to be 15 or 16 songs in total. So it's a little bit more than the normal album has, but I was away for a while, so I had a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
And Cliff found some amazing songs, and I felt connected to each of them, and they're going to play a really pivotal role in this album, but they do match. The album's called Gravity. So the first part is going to be basically, the liftoff, where we're getting released from gravity. Gravity does a lot to pull us down, right?
Yeah.
So it's like breaking through the gravity will be the first part of the album. So it's got a lot of energy, it's got a lot of, cool fun songs, and then what happens when we get high enough is we start falling back. But because that's what gravity does, right? You can get through it, but sometimes you start falling back. Like if we want to, and this has to do with my NASA background, but
Yeah.
if you're in space and you come back, eventually gravity gets a hold of you again. But in my case, the coming back part of it is I'm falling into myself. So the second part is more about the reflection. So there are songs that are a little bit deeper, maybe a little bit more reflection based feelings in the songs. There's still a lot of energy though, don't get me wrong. And basically I think it's going to be a cool way to do a part 1 and a part 2, and then the full album being Gravity. So, because gravity has a lot to do with my life.
Would say that's a great way to describe your life. And I was going to ask you where you get your inspiration, but I would almost guess that a lot of your inspiration comes from your life experiences.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes it's just a word you hear. Sometimes but then it starts getting greater meaning for you as a writer. Sometimes it's about an experience. Like I have a song on the album called Where I Want to Be. And that's going to be dedicated to a man that was married to a woman that was very instrumental in my early career. From a fan standpoint, she led my street teams to begin with. And her husband passed away. He was a longtime trucker, long haul trucker. And part of the inspiration for that song was imagining, because I was driving, about 1,000 miles each way to see my wife at the time. And I was doing that like every 2 weeks. So I started imagining what it would be like to be a trucker and doing this for your career. And I thought about what he must go through with his family. And he's since passed. And so I'm going to dedicate that song Where I Want to Be to him. But it's about the longing to to be back with the one you love, to be by her side. And so the whole point is you're going 1,000 miles. You're going to be there as soon as you can. And before you know it, I'll be with you where I want to be. And that's going to be a really good song. So I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about
But
other people that inspire you? Like, are there any particular artists that you look to for inspiration? You like their
yeah,
style or anything like that?
yeah, there are a lot of artists that come to mind. But I mean, early on, I was a Garth fan, and I was always connected because I was a marketing guy. So I was always connected to the fact that Garth, he was supposedly a marketing guy before
Really?
he
I did
got
not know that.
famous. And so we kind of had a similar path in that sense. And some writer, there's Victoria Shaw, a famous writer. She wrote my song Waikiki Cowboy. That's one of my fan favorites, one of my favorites, because I grew up in Hawaii kind of.
Yeah.
I'd see her, she would call me Little Garth, and I'm pretty sure she'll remember that if she sees this interview. But she used to call me Little Garth because she felt like she saw me doing so much just on my own, without any label support, without a manager. And so I was working really hard my whole career. I'm used to it. Now I've actually I kind of tell people, the first time I wanted to disrupt, and I wanted to be like, I wanted to experience everything, but I was in a room with the lights off, feeling my way through it. And I accomplished a ton, and I made a huge difference in the country and the world. But this time I want to do the same thing. I want to disrupt, more open to my collaborations, but I feel like I'm going through that dark room isn't dark anymore. I feel like I know what I need to do to get through the room, and I don't have to rely on just feeling my way through and figuring it out. I kind of know what it's like, and I know what I want to do and accomplish, and I know my mission, what I'm going to do. And it's for everybody else to find out and watch, and they'll see it and they'll be like, here goes Ansel again, and I'm in control of what I do, how I promote. I think when you hear this song, Whiskey Makes Her Miss Me, you're going to think to yourself, I hear that on radio.
Yeah. What do you want your listeners, your fans, your audience to take from your music? What do you hope that they hear when they listen to your music?
I think I want them to have a little bit of fun.
Okay.
I think again, the first time through, I was really hell bent on staying very positive. And I'm not distancing myself from that necessarily.
Well, it
but
can
I
be more than
am.
one thing anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, so I have some, I have some words in my songs that I maybe wouldn't have sang the first time, or
you're
recorded or
also
put
in a
out.
different season of your life.
Yes, yes, that the sheen is worn off, right?
Yeah.
I know what life is. I know what people think. I know what, I know that you have detractors, and I know that you have people that support, and I know all that. The first time, you're hoping everybody loves you, and like they get behind your mission and they understand everything that you want to do. But to me, at the end of the day, the person that's listening to the radio or the stream or having a party, I want to be a part of that too. And
Well,
I
and I
think
also think
that's,
you'll find your people. Your
yeah,
people will find you and they will be your people. And we don't all have to be everybody's people. We will find the people that fill our soul and what we're looking for. And
yep.
you'll do that for your people.
Yeah. I probably hid from some of the parties back in the day, just in terms of like the way fans like to party, right? I kept that away from me a little bit because of my sense of what I wanted to be and stand for. This time, though, I want to be more involved in the party, not in a bad way, but in a fun, energetic way where they're going to be like, do we have some Ansel Brown music? You
Yeah.
know, that's one of the things they're thinking about when they get, they just got a, 12-hour shift. They punched out. They got home. They're going to have, their friends over and have a six pack, and they're going to be like, hey, can we listen to some Ansel Brown? That's what I want.
There you go.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff that I didn't really experience the first time, I think. That's one of my, not having the lights on and trying to feel my way through it and just learning. I kind of wish I had been more like that back then, and I wasn't. So this time it's more authentic me.
How exciting, though, that you get this second chance. You get this new season in life to do that, right? That you didn't
Exactly.
just stay out of the scene, out of the music scene, but that you came back into it now stronger than ever before.
Yeah. And then hip hop artist that's rising out of Charlotte called Von Bars. Him and I are doing a song. We just finished a song called Queen City Rodeo that we've got in production right now.
That's
And
awesome.
we're going to have fun with it in the Queen City here.
Good.
and just see where it goes. But we're supporting each other, and we're brothers. And same thing with Nerdana. She's as excited as can be to build something with me in the United States as an artist out of Switzerland. And it's going to be fun, and people are going to be surprised at that. That's going to be different than anything I've ever done. Just like the hip hop star, it's going to be different than anything I've ever done. And it's because of where I'm at in my life. And I don't want to just stay back and be kind of there, but not experiencing everything I could if I open myself up to it.
Isn't that being vulnerable again to
Yes.
what's new and different and just not staying in the box, but, stepping outside of it and seeing what else you can explore and be involved in. And I
Yep.
think that's wonderful. I think that makes us all better people and relatable. And we just bring all people to the table that can enjoy life and enjoy your music and enjoy your collaboration.
When I went out of Nashville in about 2009, I didn't really keep anybody up to date. So there's a whole bunch of information that that Nashville is going to learn. The music industry is going to learn about what Ansel has done the past 12, 14, 15 years that they didn't even know I did. So it's going to be a really cool story. But moving forward, beyond the two collaborations with these artists, got a ton of opportunity for me to get back involved with Children's Miracle Network and Ronald McDonald Houses, because I still want to do that. And I've been away from it because my focus kind of changed. I'm very involved with veterans. So those three staples in giving will continue to be a part of what I do. I'll continue to back my veterans. They're like brothers and sisters to me, even though I'm not one. I was just a Navy brat. But they have accepted me as family. And in my darkest times, those men and women were there for me when I wasn't there for myself. And they told me over and over, Ansel, we're behind you. They treated me like I was a veteran. It was crazy. It was the most honoring thing you can imagine. So I'm going to continue to give to veterans, but I'm going to reopen my dialogue with Children's Miracle Network and the Ronald McDonald Houses. And that's going to be a big part of what I do. I'm going to be doing concerts. I'm going to be doing radio tours. I'm going to be launching singles, and I'm going to be part of the industry, and I'm going to make my mark, and I'm going to disrupt as much as I can, even when people are like, no way, no.
You're going to be like, yes, way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So what's the best way for people to connect with you, follow you so that they can come see you perform, hear your music, all the things?
Yeah. So the first way will be anselbrown.com. So it's just ANSELBROWN.com on every social networks, from X to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you search for Ansel Brown, you should find me. It's usually Ansel Brown. If it's not Ansel Brown, it would be Ansel Brown Music. But I'm on every platform. I need all the support I can get. I need as many people following me so that as I do this, I'm going to discover the people that really care and really want to be a part of it. And I'm going to invite them to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Well, Ansel Brown, it's been delightful to have you as my guest and to hear your story and to be able to share it with my audience. And it's exciting about your album that will be coming out, all of the songs that you're producing. I've listened to your music. It really is fantastic. And it's just great to hear that you are someone who not only is a great artist, a wonderful singer, songwriter, but you're also someone who gives back. And certainly we need more people like you in our world making a big difference. So thank you for being my guest today.
No, thank you.
And that will do it for this edition of the Conversations with Nicole show. Until I see you again, I hope you have a great day.